You know, it's hard to believe, but it's also not so hard to believe that there are 8 million people in this country who suffer from eating disorders, everything from anorexia and bulimia to emotional overeating. And it's not something that you can just automatically change your behavior and snap out of. So today we're going to spend a few moments talking with somebody who has spent a number of years dealing with eating disorders. And we'll see what the world is like walking in her shoes. Tarika has dealt with eating disorders over a large portion of her life before she was able to come to terms with it and to get healthy. And she is a writer who has written about her experiences in the hopes that she can help other people who deal with eating disorders. So welcome.
Thank you.
Good to have you. I hear that so much, as far as eating disorders are concerned, are rooted in things with childhood. So talk to me for a minute about your childhood. I mean,
I grew up internationally. I went to an international boarding school in England and was away from my parents at a very young age. And I think that I lacked a lot of stability that normal children grow up with. There was constant movement, traveling. I wasn't with them most of the time. So I think that I looked to food to comfort myself. That was sort of the only thing I could rely on. So any emotional state, any disturbed emotional state, I would just eat.
You'd eat. So when did it start? I mean, how old were you when looking back, you know, when you first started to eat, and not just for nutrition, but for other reasons?
Well, my first memories were 4 or 5 years old, you know, sometimes eating like white bread and sugar and cinnamon was sort of my favorite food or a staple at that time.
Well, what would send you to it? I mean, when you say 4 or 5 years old, was it because you'd be, I'm upset, so I'm going to eat a cinnamon roll, or what was going on at 4 and 5 years old that made you want to make those food choices?
Well, I was alone, so I felt lonely and unprotected and unloved.
And so you got comfort?
From food.
From food.
Yeah.
Okay, talk to me about adolescence, because with a lot of people it manifests itself then. Was it worse by adolescence?
It continued to get worse. I mean, I developed early, so I kind of had a woman's body very early on. And hormonal fluctuations definitely affected my weight a lot, and then feeling uncomfortable, feeling too heavy. I would end up eating more to try and soothe those feelings of discomfort. So it became a vicious cycle very quickly. And then at a certain point, I was like 15, I turned it around. I was fed up of being a chubby child and young woman, teenager, and just stopped eating and swung to the other side.
So stopped eating. Give me an example. What was a typical day like when you were in that phase?
Well, like I was in India at the time, and I would wake up and drink a cup of chai, not have any breakfast. Lunch was like a slice of papaya. You know, maybe around 4:35, I'd have a piece of brown bread with a banana on top, and then maybe later before bed an apple, you know, but this went on for months and months, so hunger, I sort of became high from hunger.
Really? Because I wondered, you know, were you, you know, because there are lots of people who have tried to do, you know, crash diets and starve themselves, and it doesn't work because of the fact that people are so hungry. And I always wonder, when you're dealing with an eating disorder like this, I mean, are you really starving all the time, or is there a point where you just don't feel like food?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, you have many periods of hunger, intense hunger, and then the body sort of gives up. Like if you don't eat long enough, the hunger goes away until it comes back again. But what happens is the hunger gets deeper and deeper and deeper. So I was able to maintain not eating, you know, until I was maybe 17, turning 18.
So like 2 years you did this?
Yeah, and then...
How thin did you get?
Well, I was like 85 pounds.
And you're how tall?
5'2".
Oh my goodness.
Now I'm like 107, 105, 110, you know, kind of in there.
So were you skeletal? Could you see your ribs and,
Yeah,
and everything?
yeah. I got very skinny. But then at a certain point, the survival mechanism kicked in and I got so hungry. I started binging. And that's really when my compulsive eating habits really became even stronger and more powerful. Like I just could not stop eating and gained a lot of weight very quickly.
Yeah, how much?
My heaviest after that went up to 140. Okay. And on a small frame, it's a lot, you know.
Tell me about the people around you. Even though you moved around a lot in boarding schools, you still must have had friends or teachers or people who looked at you and went, you know, you're looking thin, or boy, you're putting on a couple of pounds. I mean, did people around you notice the changes in your body?
Yeah, but people are polite, you know. I think, I mean, what's kind of sad is people look at you and compliment you when you lose weight. You know, it's preferred to be skinny. People, you kind of look better when you're skinnier in some ways.
Did that give you a kind of a positive affirmation when people say, "Oh, you lost weight"? Because I know I know people will say, because they'll say, "Oh, you're looking thin," and you go, "Oh, thank you," and then you think, "Why are you saying thank you?" Because you know. Because somebody's telling you that you look thin. Oh, you lost weight. Oh, I appreciate that.
Well,
you know, seriously, that's the response.
Mean, it's a great compliment, but lately, like, I mean, I still fluctuate 5 pounds. And recently, I lost weight. I went through a hard thing in my life. My mother passed away, and it was hard for me. Thank you. And I got kind of skinny for a while, and people would compliment me on how skinny you look, and because I know that it's only a matter of time until I start eating again, it's almost like I can't receive the compliment or enjoy being skinny, or because the next thing you know, I'm gaining my 5 pounds again. You know, and that's just what I've learned to live with. You know, I have a lifelong tendency to overeat. Did
you purge?
No.
You never did that?
I couldn't, actually. I think I've tried a couple times. Thankfully didn't work.
See, I've never understood that at all, because if there's anything, there are few things I hate more in this world than throwing up. You know, so the people who could make themselves do it, it's like, yeah. You know. Tell me about a turning point. You know, actually, I'll ask you two. Tell me about a low, tell me about the lowest low, and then tell me about the turning point.
The lowest low was, I would say, early 30s. And it was when I really cared about my body and how I looked and how I felt. And I was trying diets, and, you know, I would manage to lose a few pounds, but then I would gain. And, you know, the hunger binging thing was at work there, you know. And I just kept trying and failing and trying and failing and trying and failing. And I had also, at the same time, decided that this was going to be my life's work. I was going to focus on creating meditations to help other people who struggle with their body and food. And the more I focused on it, writing the book and creating these meditations, the worse my compulsive eating habits became.
Really?
Yeah, because it was just all my attention was on food all day long, you know, how to fix it. But then, even though I was trying to find the solution, wherever your attention is, that's where your attention is. So if you're constantly thinking about food, you end up eating a lot.
You become what you think about most of the time.
Exactly. So it just got worse and worse, and I really felt completely helpless, and I was gaining weight. And
so what turned you around? What was the turning point?
Total acceptance.
Of
being round, heavy, uncomfortable in my body, and an overeater. And there was just this sense of, you know, I can't stop this, so I'm just going to love myself as I am with all my imperfections and all the habits that they're truly destructive. You know, overeating is a very destructive habit. It's violent, really, to be eating more food than your body needs. You know, you feel uncomfortably full and you still continue eating. But I couldn't stop. It was when I finally wholeheartedly accepted that I might never change. This might be my lifelong struggle, and that's okay.
Stop beating myself up.
Exactly. That was the thing as well. The whole guilt and shame cycle broke with that. And I continued to gain weight because I really stopped trying.
But it wasn't in a bad way. It wasn't because of, you know, angst or anxiety or anything else. It was just, I'm hungry. I'm hungry, I'm having a sandwich with cheese on it.
Well, you know, the thing is, though, it's never really hunger. There's always, you know, food issues and overeating and cravings is always about something else, always. So, you know, mine was loneliness, feeling unworthy of love, not having a life partner, a man in my life, or my work. Those were my two things that always drove me to overeat. You know, a lack of fulfillment, and then trying to get food, fulfillment from food, right, which never works because food is for your body and it can't satisfy you emotionally, but I kept trying. And then after a certain point, it just, because I stopped trying and I stopped focusing on it and I stopped making such a big deal out of it. So I overate, so I felt uncomfortable, and it became each day I started to say to myself, well, what's the most loving, caring thing you can do for yourself today, Tarika? And I would do that thing. And it was really through just loving myself that I healed and lost interest in food and started to focus on other things and realized that anyway, you know, maybe not all men, but there were a portion of men that didn't mind rounder women, and, you know, that was okay. And
did you find fulfillment? Are you fulfilled right now?
That's such a good question. I think it depends on the day.
Well, listen, you know what? It's so funny because people will say that what you said earlier, I was trying to find fulfillment. It's like, well, yeah, it does depend. Today I am, tomorrow not so much.
Exactly.
You know? I mean,
exactly.
Is anybody fulfilled? Really?
Right. I know, and that's recently. You know, I mean, I do want a life partner. I haven't found my man yet, and you know.
Well, maybe he's out here on the internet right now.
That could be. You know, so sometimes that causes me pain, but then I think, well, you know, if I was married and or in a solid relationship, there's so many moments where the guy isn't fulfilling all your needs anyway. So
trust me, you'd be eating a lot more if you're married with children. I can say that you'd be eating a lot more for the wrong reasons. See, I'm glad it's nice that I can joke with you about this because but I'm sure that in years past you couldn't joke about it because it was you know,
exactly.
The fact that you've accepted it and you're okay about it.
That's true. That's true. It would have been a very different conversation. So you're talking to me pretty much on the other end of it. I don't suffer about food. I don't suffer about my body, even though I do fluctuate 5 pounds. Even at my heaviest, I'm basically okay. Life doesn't stop like it used to. Like I wouldn't want to get out of the house because of so much shame around my body and overeating. So now I can laugh about it. If you would have talked to me like 5 years ago, I might have been crying on the show. So I have really gone into the issues and come out the other end. But I will say, you know, for years I thought, oh, if only I maintain a certain weight, or if only I eat a certain way. I had this idea of there was something to achieve, and once I got there, I wouldn't suffer anymore and everything was fine.
You'd be happy once you got there.
Right, and now I realize that's not the case. Every single day, I have to be conscious about food. Almost every day I have an impulse to overeat or an impulse to eat something that isn't right for me. I've just gotten better at being centered in those moments, or recognizing that, okay, food isn't going to fulfill my need right now, and I don't eat, but the impulse is still there, and sometimes I still do overeat, you know.
But it doesn't
but I
control
don't
and
make a
drive your
big
life.
deal of, yeah.
Like it did in the past. Let's end with this. What would you say to the 15-year-old girl who is watching this right now, who has an eating disorder, either overeating for the reasons that you did, for insecurity or needing fulfillment and comfort, or the other end of the spectrum, anorexia or binging and purging? What would you say to her? What advice would you give to her right now?
To, first of all, get help, because I think guidance from a professional, depending on the degree of her struggle, like working with a nutritionist to get educated on what foods are healthy and satisfying for the body, and what's going to make her feel good. That's going to be supportive. And then her family situation is going to need to be addressed. If there's issues in her family, she might need support from a therapist to deal with those issues. There's always going to be some reason why she's either overeating or undereating. So working with a nutritionist, working with a therapist, and in general, I know it's hard at that age to be relaxed and accepting of who you are, because you're trying to define yourself. You're trying to get to know yourself, and there's naturally a lot of insecurities that happen at that time, and then the whole hormone fluctuations. But if she can, just more and more love herself for who she is, with all her imperfections, with all her strengths, and find people that respect and love her too, like friends that are supportive, And I guess you could say that for any age, finding people that are supportive and nourishing, and surrounding yourself with those.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your story with us, letting us walk in your shoes.
Thank you.